Herkese merhaba, tekrar hoş geldiniz. Katılımcılarımız katılmaya devam
Hello,
ederken
everybody. The attendees are coming in at the moment. My name is Ayça Birkan from İnogar, and I'm the project coordinator for the Building Networks for Social Enterprises Fair Turkey. We started our preliminary work in April 2021 for this project, and today we're going to have the launching event. We're very excited to have you with us today. Firstly, before the project presentation, I will give you some information about the launching event. The launching event is going to have 3 sessions. In the first session, the project's officer from the World Fair Trade Organization, which is the project partner, Heide Heikkinen, is going to talk about the project targets and the main steps. And then in the second session, moderated by Professor Itır Arhat, the co-founder of İnogar, Ali Ercan Özgür, World Fair Trade Organization CAO Erinç Sahan, and Director General for Financial Cooperation and Project Implementation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Directorate for EU Affairs, Bülent Özcan, are going to talk about the Building Networks for Social Enterprises Fair Trade Turkey project. And in the third session, we're going to talk about the importance of fair trade for Turkey. Our third session is going to be moderated by Mehmet Sarıca, the board director of İnogar, and we're going to have Güneşin Aydemir, food activist. We've got Özesmi, founder of Good Food Trust, Abdülhalim Demir, founder of Bego Jeans, and Matt Frat, co-founder of İnogar. Now, I would like to talk about the project targets and the main steps that we're going to take. Please let us share at the moment the project presentation.
proje sunumunu paylaşabilirsek sevinirim. Ben bu arada aktarmaya başlayayım.
If we could share the project presentation, that would be great. The Building Networks for Social Enterprises is going to establish long-term cooperation between the social enterprises in Turkey and the counterparts in Europe. We are going to help the social enterprises with this project, and our partner is going to be the World Fair Trade Organization, and we would like to effect change in the industrial and cultural and production chains. The main target of the project is to establish a fair trade network in Turkey. In order to realize this main target, we are going to make use of the know-how and transfer the know-how of the World Fair Trade Organization to Turkey. Therefore, we would like to raise the awareness of the stakeholders in fair trade in Turkey and abide by the fair trade principles and the fair trade verification methods used by the World Fair Trade Organization, and therefore expand fair trade practices and create a dialogue between the fair trade parties in Turkey and abroad. The trainings that are going to take place in the project are going to take place in Istanbul, İzmir, Ankara, Adana, Mersin, Gaziantep, and Bursa, therefore in 7 locations. We have 6 different groups that we target: social enterprise founders, social enterprise managers, social entrepreneurs, representatives of civil society organizations, representatives from agriculture and production cooperatives, as well as representatives of social incubators. In the project, we're going to have the launching event today, and then we have 8 main activities in the 15-month project. We will have the training of trainers with the participation of the World Fair Trade organizations. After that, we're going to provide training sessions for social enterprises. For 2-day, these are going to be 2-day trainings. Then we're going to have roundtable meetings with the ecosystem stakeholders, and hence create the fair trade network among the Turkish stakeholders, among the Turkish parties. And then in the World Fair Trade Summit in the Netherlands, we're going to have best practices field trips. Following the end of the project, we will have provided extensive know-how and expertise transfer on fair trade practices. The project will have enhanced the social economy ecosystem in Turkey. It will have contributed to the partnership between governmental institutions and other stakeholders. And there's also the strong possibility for application in other parts of Turkey for the project. And also the project will produce adaptable deliverables, such as the training curriculum, which can be utilized by other civil society organizations. So these are the main steps of the project that we're going to take. Thank you very much for participating in the meeting today. If you have any questions about the project, you can reach us through the contacts that my colleagues are going to put in the chat box, and you can learn about the steps that we're going to take in the project later on this way. Now I'd like to pass the floor to Ms. Heikkinen. She's going to talk about the project processes from the perspective of the World Fair Trade Organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Heidi Heikkinen from WFTO, the World Fair Trade Organization, and I'm the representative from our side to this project. WFTO is a membership organization having members from all over the world, from more than 80 countries, and all our members are creating a positive social impact for their employees and for the society and communities around them. On top of supporting our members and campaigning for fair trade globally, we do the verification of our member organizations, making sure they follow the fair trade principles in their business activities, and hence we are giving them the chance to promote their businesses and their products as guaranteed fair trade. So we are lending our experience from the past 30 years on implementing fair trade practices, fair trade promotion, and our SME monitoring system for this project, and for the trainings and events the project is going to implement in the coming months. We are very excited to have this project to start a fair trade network in Turkey, a big country that is no doubt very rich in cultures and traditions, related both to your history and geographical location. We are very interested to see the social enterprises, artisans and farmers we can invite to come together under this network and to get to know their businesses, business ideas and products. Personally, I've also worked as a fair trade and social entrepreneur myself. And I know running a small business can be a lonely work sometimes, and how important it is to have peer support and a network around you who shares the same values, and to find joint force with a group of entrepreneurs and like-minded people. And then a few words about the promotion of a relatively new concept like fair trade and fair trade verification in a new country. I come from Finland, where fair trade was a quite unknown concept just 20 years ago. And from my own experience and country, I can say, now looking back, that a tremendous change on people's awareness and interest in ethical trade can be made in 5 or 10 years. So I'm very excited to be launching the project with you today and looking forward to activities on the ground in Turkey. I wish to welcome you to this event, and I hope to see you joining the network or working together with our project. Thank you so much.
Ayça, biz direkt başlıyor muyuz?
Çok teşekkür ederiz. Teşekkür ederiz Haydi.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Yes, you're going to start in a minute, Professor Erhard, for the second session. Thank you very much. It is very exciting to be here with you today. I have a hat of social entrepreneur as well, so I'd like to introduce that first of all. We established Adım Adım 15 years ago, and we didn't even know that it was a social enterprise at that time, as a matter of fact. But then we learned that we were a social enterprise because we were trying to solve a systematic problem. And they told us that, other people told us that we were working in a social enterprise. That is how I learned it. I'm very excited to be part of this event, therefore. Social entrepreneurship obviously developed over the years, and there's more interest in this concept now in Turkey. If until a few years ago we didn't really know about the dimensions of this, as a matter of fact, but through a research funded by the British Council, we have found that there are about 9,000 social enterprises in Turkey, and they're generally concentrated in Istanbul, Izmir, and Ankara, and a lot of them in Ankara, to be honest. And therefore, the project focusing on other cities as well and reaching the other social enterprise stakeholders in other cities is very important, is very exciting in my opinion. Another detail that we found out in the research is that among the social entrepreneurs, those in the ecosystem could develop new methods, could learn from one another, but those outside of the ecosystem had a lot of problems along the way. Therefore, learning from one another, peer learning, is going to be a very important element in this project. And thirdly, we asked in the questionnaire in the research, what is your biggest problem? And they told us that people still don't know about social entrepreneurship. They don't know what it is. So with the communication support in this project, we're going to be supporting that part as well. And in terms of fair trade, with my academic hat and also as a person who is working constantly with social entrepreneurs, I always think that, yes, there is more interest at the moment in this area. We would like to get fairer products, but we don't know who from. And sometimes social entrepreneurs may have problems there as well. They don't know who to work with and around which principles. Therefore, this is going to be a win-win situation for everybody, in my opinion, and I believe that it is really going to expand the Turkish social economy ecosystem in Turkey. A moderator shouldn't talk this much, I know, but this is very exciting for me. That is why I wanted to have this introduction. Now I'd like to continue with Dr. Ali Ercan. He has been my partner in many projects. He is also a social entrepreneur, and he works on fair trade as well. So I'd like to ask you, as a social entrepreneur, what contribution is this project going to make to social entrepreneurs like us, and also what is going to be the benefit of bringing together the concepts of fair trade with social enterprises? Thank you very much. You have made a very energetic introduction that really motivates us. And also, social entrepreneurship and fair trade, looking at them together is very important. Heidi also mentioned bringing together two important organizations like these is very important as well. World Fair Trade Organization and INOGAR. I would like to thank the Directorate of EU Affairs as well in supporting this project. So social entrepreneurship does not have any legislation at the moment in Turkey, as a matter of fact. And INOGAR and World Fair Trade Organization believing in each other and creating such a project is, I believe, commendable, and that is a very exciting development. We sometimes talk with Uygar from Good for Trust, for example. They have certain approaches as well. We are now going to implement this project, and we say, for example, that there are about 9,000 social enterprises in Turkey, according to the study conducted by British Council. But we used to work concentrated on certain cities before, but now we're going to dive into other cities and other areas as well, and that is going to be very important, I believe, because we have a lot of experience from our past. We're going to visit a lot of social enterprises. We're going to see how experienced they are, what kind of abilities, capabilities they have. Also, we have a social entrepreneurship dynamism in Turkey as well. It's a very dynamic environment. We have a lot of young people in Turkey. There's a search for a new kind of economy as well. And in Turkey, we experience disasters, the climate crisis. Therefore, there's a lot of ripe potential here to work on this issue. And it was important to canalize this energy to a project, and this project is going to bring together many different stakeholders and is going to inspire people, is going to have added value. I can just say from the perspective of a social entrepreneur that we have seen a lot of unsuccessful models up until now. The enterprises who couldn't really have a sort of a cyclical economy, who couldn't really inspire other people. We have encountered such examples. And I can say that from my hat of being in Inogar, we have been successful in about 5 or 6 years and developed a business of about 300 million. And obviously, we're not going to be able to create an economy of billions of dollars, but we're going to have transparent supply chains that are going to be wary of the environment and also going to focus on fair trade, agriculture, culture and arts. We have an fair access initiative in Istanbul as well at the moment. So once you do that, and if you try to build a social economy, I believe that these efforts are going to have a lot of impact. That is what we dream of. And obviously this is going to be enabled through the participation of all that are here. I think at the moment that we're at ground zero at the moment. And the contribution coming from all the participants is going to be very important. I really believe that we're in the throes of making history at the moment. And through the people that are going to benefit from this project, I believe that we're going to progress a lot. Thank you very much. Yes, you have mentioned supply chains as well, and I believe that was very apt, because Bego is going to be with us in the next session. I have learned a lot from Bego Jeans in that regard, because you look at it as being fair, but then a product being fair is not enough. The whole supply chain has to be fair as well, and I learned this from Bego. I had met Erinç before the pandemic, as a matter of fact, and we understood from the first meeting that we had that, in fact, we're going to do something very important, and we had worked for years around the same principles. We have the same dreams as well. Therefore, it is very nice to be with you once again for a new project. So we're saying that we're building networks. This is part of a network as well. The project itself has established a certain network. We shouldn't disregard that fact either. So we have built that network to some extent through this project. We have CSOs, the public sector, cooperatives, all of us are together here. So Erinç, we're talking about fair trade, but there could be some people who don't know that much about fair trade because we sometimes internalize certain concepts very much, but some people might not be too familiar with these concepts. So let's talk about that concept as a matter of fact. So in your opinion, what is fair trade, and what are the principles of fair trade, and how can they contribute to social enterprises?
Çok gurur verici.
This is quite an honor to be here with you on this occasion, and such an initiative taking place in my motherland is quite a personal thing for me. I attach great importance to this topic, and I sincerely believe that this topic is of great importance for Turkey as well, because there's this reality that exists in the Anatolian culture that is represented by fairness, solidarity, and working together. It already exists embedded within the culture itself. So I can talk about fair trade from a technical perspective, and when it is explained in a technical perspective, and I'm sure that no one would object to it because I would be talking about the logical factors and the logical aspect of it. But before that, we need to be looking at the world trade at the moment. When we look at the world trade, we see that there is an unfairness and injustice that is being exhibited against the manufacturers, producers, workers, farmers, the trade systems. They are making people poorer and poorer every passing day, and it creates a system that avoids societies to prosper and to build welfare within each other, within their own system. For that reason, everyone is seeking for an alternative system. And in the core of that, we need to be giving priority and importance to the producers. It can be a handicraftsman, or it can be the manufacturer, it can be the farmer. If you can keep them strong, system will be strong. Otherwise, the ambiguity will increase, and risks will increase, and sustainability of their life and their livelihood becomes to be under threat. So how can we act in an opposite manner? We need to be giving priority to the producers, to their establishments, to their systems. We may talk about protecting the workers' rights, human rights, transparency. Each and every one of those components are the parts of fair trade. They can be listed as the items on the list of fair trade that creates fair trade. When we look at the SMEs and the farmers, late payments create major impact on the system, and this creates a requirement for them to borrow, and this is imposing pressure on those SMEs and creates an imbalance. And as a result, development and the development of the societies becomes to be more difficult. For that reason, in the fair trade, when you are putting on your order, at least half of it will be paid in advance, and there will be at least a long-term commitment for them to establish a business relation with them. You would underline that you're willing to carry out a long-term business relationship with them. But the key to all of these things will be social entrepreneurs, because if the system runs for social purposes, those rules will be abided by, and they will be implemented in a very natural manner. Otherwise, they will try to walk around the bush, will try to avoid all those principles if the social entrepreneurship wouldn't be kept in mind. For that reason, fair trade can be perceived as a movement, as a philosophy, as an organization, as an international solidarity organization. All of these topics are the reflections of the actual situation, and Turkey being included in all of them and establishing a movement and solidarity movements and getting involved is quite exciting for me to see. Thank you very much. Producers, manufacturers being emphasized is quite important, because in our world, social entrepreneurship, fair trade, when we start talking about them, we always prioritize manufacturers and would like to see them prosper. And you described a completely different production model, manufacturing model. Uygar will be explaining it better than I would do. I don't want to be stepping in his area. But first of all, what you're telling us is showing us that it is possible, and this can happen. When I was working in the corporate world, um, everyone used to say that this sounds very good, but it is very utopic. All the work we're doing makes us to stand on our own feet and realize that it is possible, different than what is being taught by the corporate world sometimes. Maybe as a response, I can tell you that as a cliche, many people may say that you're dreaming, this is utopic. But right at the moment, more than 10 billion euros of trade volume in total. When we look at the fair trade markets throughout the world, there is a constant increase, and there is a demand on the side of the consumers. So even including the larger brands or the smaller shops, there is a trend, there is a movement that attaches importance to fair trade. So fair trade is starting to become a part of the world history. For that reason, there are trade systems that will be representing the future and the ones that will be lagging behind, and we will be the part of the future. Yes, absolutely. When we talk with the numbers, it becomes to be more striking, and I try to convince people by using the numbers, the scale of the economy and the jobs that are created and the impact that is being created, especially in Europe. Even after that, they question, but I'm sure that this project will be of great value while we will be trying to convince them. Now would like to come back to dear Bülent, both individually and the corporate world. Institutionally, they really support the individual entrepreneurs and carry out studies in the most needed areas and shows us and guides us how we can reach different resources. And he is with us today. Thank you very much, Bülent, for being here with us, because this transformation cannot happen by social entrepreneurs, by academicians. You are wearing a hat of an academician as well, but unless we are to have the public administration with us, the society in general with us, it can't be realized. How do you perceive this? And maybe I can formulate it in another way. How do you interpret your own impact in this system, and how together we can transform the system? Thank you very much. I'm very excited because we've been talking about this for a long period of time, sometimes while having a cup of coffee by the sea, or in the restaurant having something to eat with having a bite with you in a restaurant, or whenever we run into each other, we were discussing and keeping up with the latest developments. For that reason, seeing that things are progressing this way, Heidi and Ms. Aicha from Inogar and all of you are explaining within the scope of the project have been the things that we've been discussing for quite a long time. Among 300, 400 projects, Inogar had been one of the 33 projects that were selected. Inogar and WFTO's joint project. This project is, as I said, one of the 33 projects that were selected. We call this program the Civil Society Dialogue. 4.7 million euros of resource will be awarded, and 158 million euro budget. Social Entrepreneurship Network is one of those projects. So this is quite important for us, what is being done today within the framework of this project and what will be discussed at the macro level throughout the world. At the decision makers level, of the economy are more or less similar what is being discussed here. Maybe what is being discussed here today is even more progressive than the others, because for many years there's a search for a new economy, scarce resources, a world that is getting polluted, and the impacts are being experienced everywhere. We experience it in Turkey and in different parts of the world. I hope it won't get worse in the coming years. Everyone is observing this, decision makers, international organizations, they all see this. For example, UN, they come up with sustainable development goals. They set 17 subtitles, subheadings, and they invited everyone to take the necessary actions, not only the heads of states and the governments, but also the private sector, manufacturers, everyone, giving out a call saying them that you need to be paying attention to all of these points. You should be polluting less, you need to be acting more fair, you need to be acting just, and you need to be producing in a clean manner. So the large companies or their subcontractors, they are all receiving all those targets and objectives. But of course, their adaptation is not as easy for them as it is for the brave social entrepreneurs. Social entrepreneurs is kind of the ideal character in this adventure of taking us further, the characters of Cervantes. And for that reason, the decision makers, the major companies and the managers, they need to be, I'm sure that they will learn from your experience and they will try to adopt your experience to their companies, and they will start asking questions how we will be able to adopt this to our system. So you will be paving the way and pioneering and showing them the way how to do that. And I don't think that this will be taking much of a time. For example, UN with the development goals and the green consensus of the European Union, they say that there's going to be zero carbon dissemination. What we call by green consensus is the social, the Green Deal is the environmental sensitive, transparent manufacturing systems, respecting human rights, not polluting the environment. When we read the Sustainable Development Goals, the Green Deal, we see what the social entrepreneurs are telling us, just like Erinç has stated a while ago. We see the principles of the fair trade in the Green Deal as well. Of course, they may tell you that this looks very utopic. Maybe this may look utopic for major companies, or it may look utopic to discuss, and it can be quite difficult to discuss those kind of things where trade is quite challenging and competitive. But we need to be getting these done. Decision makers will make the manufacturers get to do these things. Major companies are now starting to talk about the social impact. The ones who are traded in the stock exchange or multinationals, of course, they are bragging with the profits that they generate, but at the same time, they try to show the society that they are generating a positive impact in the society, they're contributing to the society, and try to describe the amount of the budget they are allocating for this purpose. And in different parts of the world, while you are borrowing from the IFIs, they can justify themselves just by showing them that they're acting socially responsibly, environmentally responsibly. But the ones who are carrying the flag of social entrepreneurship, the ones who are carrying the flag of fair trade, will be paving the way. Maybe it will not be easy with the major companies, but talking about it is very important. Explaining it is very important. Fair Trade Project Turkey is one of the projects that we have in this regard. And at the same time, whatever being discussed in here, in Ankara, in the public agencies, or in this framework, whatever you need in this framework, and whoever you want to reach, whatever you want to achieve, in order to take your messages in the public sector, we will be there to support you. We will be involved right in the core of it, I believe it would be very important to keep talking more about it. And I sincerely believe that decision makers, major companies, local administrations, they will be knocking on your door to find out how you did it, how you achieved it. They would like to learn from you. For example, it started happening with Izmir Metropolitan City Municipality, with the Bodrum Municipality. It happened. Maybe they're not asking to you there, but there are some other municipalities, local administrations knocking on the door of the others about the same topic. Hopefully we'll be able to do more together. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your efforts, and hopefully all together we'll be achieving good results out of this. Thank you very much. Of course, this is a system transformation. As the social entrepreneurs, we try to do that. Of course, all of us do have our own area of specialization, and we try to transform the whole ecosystem. In Turkey, some colleagues, they try to transform the whole Turkey, some economies, some in their own areas of specialization, some in agriculture. But the important thing is everyone learning from us and transforming themselves. When we are to achieve this, be it in education, be it in trade, if we can achieve this, then the whole system will be transformed. And as you have mentioned, we've started to get the signals out of that process. Our social entrepreneurs are being invited by various institutions, and people are asking them, how did you do that? How did you achieve that? And asking for guidance. And this is the starting point of transforming the system. And as you have mentioned, consumers are now willing to buy from the social entrepreneurs, from the fair trade producers, when this is the case, they prefer it. They ask for the more ecological, more fairly produced, whatever I wear, whatever I drink, whatever I eat, who produced it and how did they produce it. So this will be transforming the behaviors. And one other thing that you have mentioned, the Green Deal, imposing on the system. Otherwise, it would not happen. I tell to the agencies that do it now, so that you will be the pioneers and the models. Otherwise, you have to do it in the near future, and you'll be doing it with everyone else, and you will be losing the opportunity to be the pioneer. Maybe I'm just interrupting once again, but I just would like to say that one of the most important things within the framework of the Green Deal is the carbon taxation. It will happen, those carbon duties, when they will be imposed, you can be sure that they will be knocking on your door to find guidance from what you have done, because our trade volume, 65% of it is with Europe. There's no way to avoid it. This is such a lively market. Everyone would like to be there. So just like we went through the difficult, challenging period of customs union. First of all, we resisted, and then we transformed, and it was inevitable to have the customs union. And then even customs union without European Union had been something preferred, but this paved the way and opened the way of the Turkish economy to be more resilient and strong. We need to be patient. First of all, there's going to be some resistance, but they can't avoid it because the world is now staying where it is moving forward. Mr. Bülent, he's always very inspiring, very sincerely, and I believe in your sincerity as well. There can be social entrepreneurs in the public sector as well. I perceive him that way. So how can you be a social entrepreneur in the public sector? But there is such thing that we can talk about transformation in the public sector. So Bülent Bey is an inspiration for me in this regard. As the second point, Erinç would also follow up on this. There's this Fair Cities network of the WFTO. I was about to ask the same question. So you guess what I would be asking. No, I'm not going to get into the details of the cities, but there's an article that says that the cities, municipalities, local administrations do have they're being expected to purchase from the fair trade producers. For example, asking the municipality the question, are you buying from the fair trade tea producers, for example. So local administrations, they are a separate topic, but I'm looking at Mr. Uygar and Bego as well. But the national government, for example, at least a few public procurement can be realized this way, because the public sector is the most important actor in the public sector. So we may include this, and this can be a very good perspective. I don't want to interrupt Erinç. I will be setting a topic. Let's listen to him about the fair cities. Right at the moment, there are more than 2,000 fair trade cities and villages, but it started spreading throughout the world. For example, in South Korea, it is widely spreading, quite exciting. And I would like to underline that the targets set by the public administrators are very important, but public procurement is as important as the public decision makers, because sometimes they set those targets, but still they cannot reach to the small producers, because the procedures, payment mechanisms, application systems, it is so complicated that it requires separate departments, and it is so much of a high risk for some manufacturers that unless you open the way for them, be it chocolate, coffee, tea, especially in the food sector, there had been a significant increase coming from the public sector. But for opening the way for a wider society, the public sector transforming its behavior and the fair trade approach is very important. I just wanted to underline this, because unless we are to have this, we reach to a certain ceiling and we can't go beyond that. So thank you very much. Uygar is sending small notes to us. Yes, small producers we will be discussing it in the next panel, because this is something that we have. When you continue growing, I will approach from a different perspective, Uygar. I know where you stand. Sometimes when you grow and when your volume grows, you're being told that you are among the large ones. I'm not going to support you. We'd like to support small ones. You can be big, you can be a large enterprise, but you can act fair, and you can run the whole operation with the fair trade principles. All those principles are so new that even the social entrepreneurs generating revenue, should it be like that or not? Why are you generating a revenue? Aren't you working voluntarily? So as you grow, the concept getting established and people accepting it, this will be introducing new difficulties, new challenges. Maybe in another meeting, we'll be discussing all of these points, and I'm sure Uygar will be there. So I would like to ask the question that I had in mind, addressed to Ali Ercan. I believe this is quite important in terms of development, especially carrying the project beyond Ankara, Istanbul, and Izmir. So how do you perceive the project with your aware of a development expert in terms of the effects of it in the ecosystem?
So obviously, the Fair Trade Organization is in the Netherlands. We have the Turkish leg at the moment, but especially we would like to expand this to many Anatolian cities as well, so that the trade side of it is going to be stronger. And maybe the people who don't know each other are going to create new business potentials. So in terms of development, we're going to be creating a certain social marketplace, as a matter of fact. So we've talked about the tenets of fair trade. We have talked about the fact that once you become larger, your principles don't have to change as well. So I'd like to find people who are going to be adopting these principles, and like to create such an ecosystem. And this can only be realized with an Anatolian solidarity. We always talk about this. Turkey is the cradle of many civilizations. We have the trade guild tradition in Turkey, a lot of experience with that, and that kind of tradition has been passed on to posterity too. So we have businesses, for example, that are older than 100 years, like Güllüoğlu, a baklava company, for example. But we are facing new problematic areas, and we can overcome this with the experience of different cities. For example, Gaziantep might have a certain approach to economy management. Van, Uşak, Antalya, Samsun, the coastal cities, for example, Mersin, Izmir could have different approaches. Istanbul could have different approaches. It is very important to bring together these experiences. That is why I'm talking about a ground zero on which we start this work. We have an economic past, we have know-how, our institutions do have them, but this project is going to be a milestone in terms of bringing together those experiences, and these are going to play a very important role here. We always talk about exports when you talk about that kind of work, but one other dream that we have here, and I'm looking at Bülent Bey and Erinç here as well, we would like to create a Turkish model in terms of fair trade, a free, innovative method. If you can create that Turkish model through the trade guilds that we had, that we called ahi in Turkish, then we can also play a very important role in terms of the progression of fair trade and social economy. Therefore, the cities, the central management part of that is going to be very important, and fair trade is going to be a catalyst here. That is why, and Erinç said the same thing as well, getting together with World Fair Trade Organization is very innovative. And the framework of the EU projects gave us this opportunity. We are going to create a new social innovation. And from the perspective of development, I believe that it is going to bring an innovation to social development. And is going to pave the way for a socially oriented development method. And domestic market is very important as well, and we see this in other countries as well. We see a rise in the domestic marketplace activity. For example, in India, the members there are now focusing on their domestic market. Exports are still very important, and especially it is very important to trade with countries that already have a developed fair trade, but using the advantage there and also investing in the domestic market, that is very important. And we've seen our members doing that in Southeast Asia, for example, in Southern Asia, in Southern Africa, we see that. And I believe that that is going to be very important in Turkey as well, because the youth would like to focus on this, and we have a robust middle class at the moment. And I believe that when you look at the age groups, especially the youth, are going to be internalizing this matter, and therefore the development of the internal market is going to be enabled as well with exports, alongside exports. Yes, that is very correct, and youth have come to the forefront in the study that we conducted as well. We checked the rate of the managers in the social enterprises, and we saw, as a matter of fact, generally the social entrepreneurs were below the age of 35, and that is very exciting. And as an academic, and I have been an academic for 20 years, I would always ask my students what they would like to do, and they would say, for example, that they would like to work in the public sector or the private sector, but some of them are now saying increasingly that they would like to participate in the social enterprises, would like to be social entrepreneurs. So obviously, Ali Ercan, the project has certain official targets, but we have certain dreams as well. And he said that if the public bought from the social enterprises as well, the system would be more sustainable. and the sustainability part is very important. They may have certain difficulties there. So he said that maybe a Turkish model could be created here. Yes, I've taken note of it as well. We'll see next year how much of that we have been able to accomplish. So Erinç and Bülent, as a last question, what are your dreams? What would you like to see with this project? Let's start with you, Erinç. So my dream is that these enterprises that are sort of on the margins of economy, only exciting for certain people, if we can make norms of general trade, that would be great. And if we do that, if we are able to do that, then we can change the negativities to do with society, to do with environment, and if we can transfer this into the general trade in both the external and the internal markets, that would be great. That is my dream. And also new social enterprise models are going to be created through this, I believe. Uygar said something very important before. He said, he talked about the largeness, the size of the social enterprises. Once the social enterprises become large, it could be difficult for them to move on with a larger capital. It is very important to get larger with the right conditions, and that is possible. My dream is for the social enterprises in Turkey to become larger in that way, keeping in line with their missions, following their original missions once they become larger as well, and therefore help create a new economic system. Yes, I totally agree with this. If you asked me the same question, I would also say that the mainstreaming of social entrepreneurship and fair trade would be my dream. We understand this, but other people have to understand this as well, in my opinion. I'd like to say one thing here before going to Bülent. In the study that we conducted, when we went onto the ground, we heard from a few social entrepreneurs that the TV series should talk about or should feature social entrepreneurs as well, and that shows us how important it is for them to mainstream this idea. Would like to see this being mainstreamed. Lastly, Bülent, what would you like to see? So throughout the project, or at the end of the project, what would you like to see? Yes, you have mentioned a very good point. When you talk about social entrepreneurs or when you talk about fair trade, some people might believe that these are utopian concepts, or one person who was brave enough, who took the necessary step, could do this. So after the 1980 coup, or before the 1980 coup and after the 1980 coup in Turkey, for example, a lot of people would say, I mean, don't get into business, those are complicated affairs, don't get into it. But then we saw that a lot of civil society organizations sprung up in Turkey as well, and voluntarism, everybody understood that voluntarism was not a bad thing. But at one point, it really required bravery to found civil society organizations in Turkey. You had to get a lot of permissions to be able to do that. I mean, obviously, entrepreneurship, whether you're a social entrepreneur or another sort of entrepreneur, it requires bravery anyway to be able to take that step. My dream is that, and Ali Ercan has said something very nice there, if we can get this into the common jargon of the public sector officials as well, that would be great. I mean, we've been talking about social enterprises for the last few years, as a matter of fact. People are just learning about this, and a lot of people that we saw, for example, before would say, I mean, these are coming from the Directorate for EU Affairs, and they're saying fancy concepts like social enterprises. They didn't know about this. Now the public institutions are aware of this, are aware of the concept of social enterprises, and they're racing with each other to be the flagship of social enterprise projects. So I believe that it is very important that the concept of social enterprises also becomes entrenched in the common public language as well. And I believe that the public sector officials, the public sector organizations, and the civil society stakeholders are going to have dialogues with one another and are going to cooperate with one another. We should be very important in terms of the jargon that we use as well. We have to bring together people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, so that they can cooperate, and also that is the same for people from different countries as well. And lastly, Ali Ercan mentioned a target, an objective. I would like to put forward an objective as well. Of course, the decision is yours. So this was a project that is being financed with a grant. We have another grant program this year as well, but this is for cities. The cities are going to be twinned, are going to be matched. So we're going to do the same thing for the local administrations, and local administrations are going to match together and are going to have a dialogue in order to solve their social problems. So maybe the Fair Trade Cities Network, or the public procurement issues that Erinç mentioned, maybe we can have two municipalities and have certain actors working in this area into this grant project as well, so that the municipalities can buy from these social enterprises. We're working on this at the moment. In a few months, we're going to announce this project. So maybe if you could also, if you would like to work on this becoming a dialogue between the cities as well, maybe we can have local administrations from Europe and local administrations from Turkey working together as well. So maybe this project could also give birth to another project as well, and we would be very happy if it did. Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, in this ecosystem, a project gives birth to other projects as well. So with that dream that you mentioned, I would like to thank you. And Ali Ercan, Erinç, thank you very much as well. I hope that we're going to have many more projects as well. Now, I'd like to pass the floor to the next session, to the next panel, when we talk about dialogue and moving together companies. Again, we're going to be with people who have been walking along the same path with us. Güneş'in Uygar, Abdülalim, and Mert, and Mehmet Sarıca, who is my partner, is going to be moderating this session. I would like to give the floor to him now. Thank you very much, Utur, and all the panelists. So we're moving on to the next session. I would like to start with a quote. As a matter of fact, a Persian poet says that death is fair, and Nazım Hikmet, in answer to this, says that for death to be fair, life has to be fair as well. So in order to make life fair, we have the fair trade movement all around the world at the moment. We see in Europe, in the US, fair trade rising, and the World Fair Trade Organization is a very important institution in promoting the principles of fair trade. And it is working on different categories of businesses. Its members are, its number of members is on increase. Before the pandemic, World Fair Trade Organization became active in Turkey, and obviously we were working on different issues before that are to do with social economy, but now fair trade comes onto the forefront as well. We're going to talk about how this can work out in Turkey, and our panelists come from different sectors in Turkey. It is like a Champions League, as a matter of fact. I mean, very, very large, you would see very large teams in this Champions League, and we have such important people in this panel as well. So Güneş'in has another schedule as well, therefore she just came on. She may have to leave later on as well. So we have the food activist from the Buğday Association, Wheat Association. Güneşin, so you're especially working on food, and we have especially seen the importance, the value of food during the pandemic. And in terms of the fair trade movement and food, what kind of a relation do you see there? What is your opinion in terms of the relation between fair trade and food? And also, we're talking about sustainable food as well, the sustainability of food. Ecologically, it has to be sustainable. So moving on there, what do you think fair trade can contribute to with concrete examples in the context of Turkey? Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. So I'm at the Çamtepe Ecological Life Association at the moment. We have a camp with the youth at the moment. So I'm in between two training sessions at the moment. I'm not going to be with you until the end, unfortunately, and I'm very sorry about that. So fair food is a rising issue in the past years. I would like to first talk about the fact that Ali Ajan has mentioned tradition and our culture, and has mentioned the trade guilds, for example, the systems with which we try to ensure fairness. And in terms of linking them with nature, I believe that I need to mention the issue of bartering a little bit as well. Because where did we lose this link in the fairness system? I live in Kaz Dağları at the moment, so I live in the southern part. We have a northern part of these mountains as well. So because of the diversity of products in between these two mountains in the past, the peoples living in the different parts in the northern and the southern part of the mountains would come together for harvesting, for a harvesting festival 2 times a year. And with this festival, they would barter products. So they had a holiday like this. This bartering still continues between certain families. What is important in bartering is that the product, the producer, and the consumer the consumers, the producers, and the product come together at the same time. And that is a very important thing. Them getting together at the same time. And they, eye to eye, have a communication. And they give their consent to this bartering. Along the process, because of the fact that supply chains came on, we drifted away from this locality, from this local tradition, because we're getting at the moment the products from people we don't know about, from far away, and these are products that have been produced with methods that we have no idea about. Therefore, this eye-to-eye contact, this product information, the production information, has been lost. And that consent mechanism has been lost. And of course, once that has been deactivated, we have been faced with intermediaries in the supply chain system, in the production chain system, the monoculture. And obviously, what is being lost here is information. So the consumer or the end product does not know who it was produced by, how it was produced, what kind of risks were taken in the production of that product, how these risks were mitigated. They don't know about these anymore. And this lack of know-how, information,
adaletin zedelendiği bu adil
damages fairness, fair trade.
gibi söyleyebiliriz. Burada tabii gıda
Obviously,
aslında doğal olan da hani insanın
in food systems, what is natural is that, because food is
beslenmesi sağlıklı olması için
important for nutrients, for nutrition, and that is a very basic need.
ve doğru şekilde üretilmesi ve üretim biçimleri
It's
şu anda
correct production and its production methods,
karbon salınımı
therefore, are very important. There are a lot of production methods, for example, that contribute to climate change, to the carbon-based economy, and also damage the fairness of the trade. Therefore, it is not very easy to instill fair trade here, because we don't exactly know, for example, what the exact cost of that product is, or whether it's really nutritional or not, nutritionally valuable or not. Therefore, in order to restore this, there are certain things that we have to be aware of while we're choosing what food item we're going to eat. One of them is locality, localization. How local your product is, how close it is to you, how close where it is supplied is to you. That way, if we learn about these, we can have more information about the product and we can pay the real value for it. And the same thing for the producer is to tell people about this and just cater for the need and issue overproduction, because overproduction is a very important issue. About 1/4 or 1/3 of the food items that are produced go to waste. Turkey is the top 3 country at the moment in terms of food waste, generating food waste. So however ecologically friendly it is, however organic it is not possible for it to be trade, to be fair when you talk about 1/4 of the food items going to waste. Therefore, being local is very important in terms of planning the production, eschewing overproduction, the correct transfer of this food without loss of information, without loss of taste, and reaching the end user in that way is very important. And again, the human relations between the consumer and the producer are very important there. If we can re-establish that link between the producer and the consumer, then the consumer can also know about the problems that the producers experience. They can also share the risks of the producer. They can start planning the production together and undertake the risks together. Therefore, they get closer to one another. I mean, fairness is very important, is very related to proximity, being closer to one another. And we overcome this problem by locality, by going local. And also, both sides having the same amount of information is very important. Another issue that I would like to draw your attention to is that generally in the supply chains, we have intermediary parties, intermediary institutions, organizations, and they are always harshly criticized. If you're an intermediary, then you're definitely violating the rights of certain people, people think. We need to reposition the intermediary, I believe, in the supply chains. We're talking about going local. But on the other side, for example, the people living in Istanbul, how can they actually feed themselves just from the local areas? And a lot of consumption takes place, obviously, in large cities. So along the peripheries of the large cities, supporting the production and feeding the people that way, yes, that could be an option, but also in terms of foods that are coming from very different regions, then the intermediaries have to be fair. The people who are occupying the positions of intermediary have to be have to be fair, because that intermediary is in fact an interface between the consumer and the producer. It shouldn't only be about the transfer of the product and the money, but rather the information that has been lost over time. In fact, all of this can generate so much new business area. So we're talking about community-supported agriculture at the moment, city gardens or city orchards, where producers and consumers share the products together. And these communities are also trying to answer the question of how to share food items or how to share food in a more equitable manner. And cooperatives are part of this process too. In fact, as Utur has mentioned, there are a lot of ideas that could inspire entrepreneurship here. And lastly, I would like to say that among the Sustainable Development Goals, I don't know which number it was, but we have decent work among those goals. And when you think about the natural resources of the world, rather than having businesses that would consume the whole resources of the world or pollute the resources of the world, creating enterprises that could foster the link that I've talked about between the consumer and the producer, that would be amazing. Lastly, we always have a development-oriented economic approach. We shouldn't think about it in terms of a pyramid getting larger and larger, and think about it in terms of networks. That would be better, I think. That should be how we enlarge, how we develop and grow. And then we could be fair in every sort of system and order, I believe.
Thank you very much, Güneş'in. At every stage we're talking about fairness, and it exists in the production, it exists in the consumption, it exists in the waste disposal. We need to be talking about fairness in all of these phases. Actually, justice is a name that is being uttered a lot in Turkey, but it should not only be uttered, but we should be walking our talk. We should not only be talking about it, but we should be walking our talk, and we should all be individually fair trade activists. And now, as we all know, one of the forthcoming names in Turkey for social entrepreneurship, Good for Trust founder and advocator, and the person provocator would be the right way to put it. He is involved in the process right from the beginning, and it's quite a pleasure to have him with us. It is very important to feel him with us. So this group that convened today here is kind of a consortium in this joint power that we're creating in order to make it sustainable in what had been started within this project in this country is only possible to join forces. So what should be the connection, Uygar, among different elements of this fair trade and social entrepreneurship, and how would you interpret the future of fair trade in Turkey in the future? So during the first panel, our colleagues set a target, set a vision, but that have a broader vision in this session as well. So when we talk about social entrepreneurs and fair trade, they sound quite similar to each other. You may tell me that these are two separate topics. How come you can make them one? Paul Rice is an Ashoka Fellow. He's the founder of Fair Trade. So Ashoka is the foundation of the social entrepreneurs. So they overlap. Bego, Güneş'in, Itır, and I myself, we are from Ashoka as well. This is a very nice coincidence, but it is not a coincidence really. It is the natural result, because if you are a social entrepreneur or if you're active in social entrepreneurship, fair trade is inevitable. Why? Because fair trade means two things for me: being fair for the nature and being fair for the individuals. When we're to think that human beings are part of the nature as well, that means you need to be fair for the nature as well. And the problem here is people need to be fixing and mending their relation with the nature, because there's a serious problem in humans' relations with the other living things, with the nature. And this is because the trade is not fair, because you are producing a service or you're producing goods and selling it to the others, and with the revenue that you generate, you sustain your livelihood. So when we talk about social entrepreneurs, we say that you need to be producing a service, or you need to be producing a good, and you need to be selling it. And while doing so, you need to be generating a social benefits or an environmental benefits, and you need to be reinvesting more than half of the amount you generate, so that the impact you're generating will expand and you'll provide your livelihood, or you'll be investing it in for other useful things. Actually, as Ali Arjam mentioned, and as our colleagues mentioned as well, the guild system, ahilik in the Turkish land, in Anatolia, this is the existential concept that we had in the Turkish land of in Anatolia. So if it is the same thing, social entrepreneurship and fair trade, then when we bring them together, a new economic system, a new way to exist for human beings, in which in this new system, human beings will mend, will fix their relations with the nature, with communities, with other human beings, and as a result, create a new system. Can we create this? Can we generate this? And for that, the WFTO has a very important role. Locality is very important, but being local by itself is not enough. For example, Bülent, in a miraculous and a gorgeous way, made this happen for us to meet with this grant, with these international financing. But this global cooperation is also required in this relationship. It needs to be existing in this relationship. For that reason, international trade is as important as local trade. And this is how it was generated. For example, when you look at the fair trade, how it became to be the truth, with the coffee production. It didn't originate in Turkey, but I mean, everyone is drinking coffee. We have something like Turkish coffee in Turkey as well. So it is international. The importance of fair trade at the international scale is important. Localization is important, but we can't limit ourselves to the local scale. For that reason, the local and the global being brought together is the name of this journey. So while we'll be deepening the local supply relations, connections, and chains, we shouldn't be cutting ourselves off from the international. Just like Güneş'in tells us, we shouldn't be condemning the intermediaries. Otherwise, if we are not to have the intermediaries, we can't have trade. Somebody has to find the buyer, somebody has to find the seller, and transport them good for just as an intermediary as well. Fair trade certification is an intermediary as well because they're providing service. But this intermediary service needs to be fair as well. It needs to be friendly to other human beings and to the nature. And it needs to be included in this ecosystem. So when we talk about local and global, these externalities for nature and for human beings need to be converted in a new economic system where they generate good and where they generate benefits for the nature and for the human beings. That is why we created Good for Trust. And within the framework of the fair trade, all our resources and all our members, we will be mobilizing them all and we'll be working together. Right at the moment, there are more than 150 enterprises, and we do have more than 20,000 diversification units, and we will be merging them with the concepts of fair trade. Alongside with the Fair Trade Turkey and Fair Trade Global, and maybe it is our wish to bring in all the fair trade cities. For example, there's this Izmir shopping area where the local producers are coming together to act in solidarity. This is the main purpose of that. Think of that type of fair trade concepts. Think of this being expanded to many municipalities in Turkey. Mr. Bülent mentioned about the examples of these, which is quite a happy occasion for us. So our target is moving towards this direction at the moment, while at the local level, we're deepening it, coming together, acting together with the municipalities. And of course, at the same time, the global relations being strengthened as well. All the producers that have the potential of having international links, we can certify them so that they can have fair trade at the international scale, and the transportation mobility being carried out in a nature-friendly manner, eliminating the fossil fuel, then I believe we would be having a very big step further. Mehmet, I agree, the framework that you have set. I believe the most important components of this project is to bring together the pioneering actors in this area, Inogar and all the members. Bego, he is with us. So, very briefly, at the end of this project, at the local level, deepened local economies, strong economies in solidarity being established and then being integrated with the global ones. And via fair cities, a future that we can live in, would be the way that we will be walking. So we talked about it, mainstreaming. Yes, it is becoming the mainstream in a very short period of time. In the coming 10 years, maximum in 20, 25 years, the whole economy will be transformed into fair trade, will be composed of social entrepreneurs, just like Bülent has mentioned, as Ali Ercanet mentioned, as Itır has mentioned. All the major companies are transforming now to become social entrepreneurs, enterprises. And last year in United States, the most prestigious company was elected to be Patagonia, with a social enterprise mentality. They've put forward themselves, and they became to be the most prestigious company. I'm working with a few companies in Turkey. They all want to say that we all need to be activist companies. We need to be fighting against the climate change, and we would be decreasing our carbon footprints. So this is the trend that I see in the coming 10 years, 20, 25 years. The whole economy will be different. And everyone who are present here will be looking back and say that we've attended the Fair Trade Turkey. And do you recall what we have discussed on that day would be the conversation that we will have in the future, I believe. Thank you. So having mainstreaming becoming to be the mainstream, we move fast after we establish all those links. When one company is certified by abiding by the fair trade principles, others would like to have it. Others would like to abide by the criteria. There are lots of other companies who are abiding by this program, and if we are to include them in a faster manner, I'm sure that we'll be able to quickly make it expand. Our third speaker is from a completely different sector, from textile sector. Abdul Halim Demir, the founder of the Bego jeans. We call him Bego. Sometimes we have nice anecdotes with him because of the problems he encountered in the sector. Bego came to life as an enterprise. So Bego, this is your story. Maybe based on your own story, you can explain us the difficult and negative working conditions in the textile sector. The working conditions, the working way, methodology, and the fair trade principles. And how would you assess the fair trade in the textile sector? And based on that, fair trade in the textile sector, how it moves in. Are there other examples like Bego in the textile sector? The floor is yours, Bego. Thank you very much. I learned fair trade while fighting against the unfair trade. I started working in the textile sector at the age of 15. I was working for the largest brand of the world. I was sanding the jeans, and this largest company of the world was not taking any responsibility about me. So they produce their products in the supply chain. For example, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, they used to have their own factories, but in time they sold their companies, started outsourcing because we have subcontracting system, but in the subcontracting system, you're legally responsible for your subcontractors. But in this outsourcing model, legally you're not responsible, but ethically you are still responsible. In that systematic work, such kind of a supply chain creates major problems. One of the problems I encountered it in my personal life. And this is how I became to be an activist in the textile sector. Because of I was diagnosed with silicosis. It is a fatal disease because of the sanding, whitening of the genes, and it causes silicosis, a fatal disease. In Turkey, according to the MOH numbers, around 5,000 to 10,000 people worked in this profession. When I was diagnosed, and I learned that this is a occupational disease, but I was an informal worker, and as a result of a social problem, we migrated to Istanbul, and I thought that this shouldn't be my fate to accept all of these things happening to me. And ITIR was involved right from the beginning. Actually, it was a small workers group that we've started fighting against those problems. We've talked about many utopias, and many people, including my own family, thought that this was a utopia. A small group of workers they told us, how can you change the system? In 2010, we banned sanding of the genes, and then we made 2 articles added to the occupational health. So all the informal workers in the previous years were considered to be retired as formal workers. And when I was thinking that it is over, now we can relax, then I learned that those brands are moving to the other countries, just like they consume the suppliers. Whenever they start encountering problems in one country, they go to other countries. So I realized that the problem is not only limited to our country. So I decided to carry out an international campaign, International Clean Textile Organization. I met with them, and we convinced more than 100 brands. And in 2011, we made them declare that they would not have jeans sanding and bleaching. But legally, we couldn't get anything done against them. For example, in France, if a very prominent law firm said that they can sue the company, but in the legal terms, there's a commercial term, the commercial confidential information. So no information is shared by our country with the international law company. So that made me realize that it is not only textile sector is not only fragile in our country, but all the other countries are in the same situation. Textile is being pushed down, prices are being pushed down. This fast fashion is causing all the conditions to move downwards, including child labor, occupational hazards, and occupational health problems and accidents are occurring because 12 hours of normal working hours would not be enough for you to provide livelihood for yourself. So you go for overtime, then you become tired, and you happen to have more accidents and start losing your limbs in those accidents. So while we were fighting in the textile sector, we had an urgent action model. Whenever workers faced with a problem in the factories, they immediately resorted to us. First, we contact the brand and try to find a solution with dialogue. If they would not find a solution, then we'll go to the consumers. With the soft power we generate with the consumers, we were trying to convince the brands. And in Turkey, we achieved a lot with those campaigns. In 2018, that was the largest campaigns of the last 20 years. A factory that was failing, a supplier of the international company, and we wanted the international company to pay the receivables of those workers, because the international company, they would be paying the money for the equipment and for the supply items, but they won't pay for the workers. They said that legally we are not responsible, we just buy their products. We're not legally responsible. We said that yes, not legally, but ethically you are, and internationally you say that you are respecting the workers. For 1.5 years, we talked to them, nothing came out, and then we put a label on the jeans saying that I produced these jeans and I was not paid for it. Please tell the company to pay us. And then in the end, for the first time in the textile sector, a brand in its own supply chain, even though they were not legally responsible, but they were ethically responsible, they paid for the salaries of the workers, and they converted the legal system now. So if they are to purchase, procure from a supplier, they should make sure that the social security premiums should be paid and the salaries should be paid, and the company should not have any kind of payable more than 7,000. So we resolve a problem, but many more problems arise. Towards the end of 2028, we had a video explaining what is a clean cloth, and many consumers started to ask, where should we buy from? This is how beggar jeans came out. Itır and our colleagues, we were meeting, they said that, why don't you manufacture with the name Bego? I said, no, I can't manufacture, I'm away from that, but the process put me in this position to produce. If there's no fair system, I said, I will create such a system. So based on all the problems that I experienced in the textile sector, I created this. Not everyone in the textile sector is bad, but the system converts them in.
So think about one brand, for example. If they have 10 factories, then they first of all have an agreement with first factory, and they check the rules in the first factory. But sometimes this product has to go through the 10 factories all together, and they have such low wages that, I mean, they might have trade unions, for example, and they might talk to the production factories, but in the marketing part, there could be a lot of different organizations that are involved. And in the marketing part, they would like to obviously sell more than the other brands, and therefore the wages as you go along the chain go down. And also another issue that we have to change in the country is the norm in people's minds. So we always talk about the past, and with many consumers, for example, with many producers, for example, when you talk about it, about the minimum wage, they say my workers are fine with the minimum wage, but they don't think, for example, I've never offered an option to these workers. I can give you a decent wage or a minimum wage. What would you like to choose? You never asked the workers that, and these people are have to work. Therefore, you have to change the norm. You have to change the norm in the people's minds that, okay, these people are being paid minimum wage and they're fine with it. So Bego wants to produce a product that is clean and that it, in terms of its impact on the environment and also socially ethical. So what I thought was that the product should be cyclical, as a matter of fact. So once you stop using it, then it should be turned into another product. So when you create a product, for example, in the textile industry, you have a lot of different materials going into the product, and you can't really separate those products later on, those materials later on at the end of the life of the product. Only 13% of the textile products can be separated at the end. So that is why we started to think about this, and we have created a clean production, fair production criteria. And we wanted to have these values installed so that people can say, for example, what if you can create this clean product, how much of a cost would you undertake? So you're going to provide decent work, decent wages for your employees. You're going to have ethical practices. You're never going to have child labor working in your factories. So that is how we created our criteria. So Bego Jeans is producing products at the moment. It is now being open to all the customers. I believe that at the end of the day, the brands going this way can be led by the consumers. So the brands obviously are not going to do this out of their own volition. So especially in the last 10 years, for example, when you look at the clean clothing movement, that started in 1990s. Bego, could you maybe wrap up a little bit, because Mert will be speaking as well. So when you look at the system, I was saying, the consumers have always shaped up the products. So in the 1990s, for example, the consumer movements in Europe also caused the brands to come up with codes of conduct. And then later on, they talked about who would implement these rules. That is why fair trade associations have been established. So that is changing day by day, obviously. At the moment, in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there are different laws that are being brought on in Europe. For example, in France, people are talking about a due diligence law in the supply chain. And also in Germany, they're thinking of a legislation to be brought on so that these supply chains could be checked for fairness. So I agree with Ugash, in 25 years, even if the brands do not want to do this, they have to do it. They will have to do it because the consumers are asking for fair products at the moment. And what if the consumers want this, then the countries, the state will have necessary laws to be able to do that. So I'm wrapping up now. Sorry, Matt, for taking from your time as well. So Bego and Bego's story can, in fact, be talked about in a whole meeting of its own. But unfortunately, we had only assigned 5 minutes for the panelists here. So I just want to add one thing to your speech. So we always look on the producer side, but obviously without the consumers, you can't really have fair trade. Therefore, it is very important that consumers have more awareness as well. The last panelist is, again, a champion in Inogar in the needs map. Mert is a co-founder. He's an actor as well. He's an artist. He's a social entrepreneur. And not only a partner in our organization as a matter of fact, but also a partner in dealing with the problems that we together face. And we have been focusing on fair trade together as well. So maybe we can hear Matt, first of all, about to hear what he's going to say about the project, first of all, and then as a co-founder of Inogash. So let me give the floor to you. So Bego could have spoken for another hour, as a matter of fact, and I would have listened. Just as a small contribution, because Ganeshan, Bego have really talked well about this issue anyway, and I'm not going to say anything different, I believe. But I remember in Inogar when we first heard of the term of fair trade. We have known each other for a very long time. He has really changed how we look at this issue. Bego with his experience as well, and Itır has made it possible for us to understand the concept of fair trade. And in the arts part of this, art, you always say, for example, that art makes us feel what is invisible, what is sort of insensible, it cannot be sensed, cannot be understood. In this new period, when we are both producers and consumers of art as well, now the audience are not only the consumers but also a participant as well. They also take part in the production process as well. So that is how art evolved over the years. That is why we're now focusing on more meaningful production and consumption, how we can change these. Inogar and how it is connected to art has started with food, and then we have moved on to crafts and then to art. Inogar has always had very meaningful activities in that regard. It has first started working in the food sector. It brought together disadvantaged groups and provided trainings for them in terms of raising intermediary personnel or a new method of production. That was very meaningful, very significant. And then we had a festival called Fest Together to bring people together, to bring stakeholders together. And we first went to Uygar to conduct this as well, and Güneş'in was there as well. The UNDP became part of this. We came together and organized a festival together. And for the festival, we would like to use sustainable energy and also have vegan food options in the festival. Once we go after fairness and fair trade, and once we are consistent in our approach and attitude and actions, then I believe we go on a new journey. As Uygar said, Uygar has mentioned 25 years, but I hope the time is going to be even shorter than that, maybe by 2030. Climate change and the climate crisis obviously really pushed people. I mean, for example, people wouldn't have been aware of the climate issue even if we hadn't been afflicted with so many disasters, even during the pandemic period, for example. In Germany, we saw this. In Belgium, we saw this. A lot of people died because of the floods. And just because of the climate crisis and the climate change, so many people have been displaced from their homes in the last few years. It is a reality that we're faced with at the moment, although people just used to think of these issues as in terms of film plots, maybe just in the past. And that makes it very pertinent that we have to take decisions. And we need to think about fair festivals, we need to think about fair production methods, and we need to accelerate this process. UNDP has established acceleration offices in 70 countries to accelerate the process of reaching sustainable development goals between 2020 and 2030. Therefore, acceleration, going faster, is going to be very important for the continuity of the world, for the continuity of our species, and the fair continuation of the species. Having less loss is going to be rather important, and obviously that is what is expected of us. As Uygar and Bego mentioned, we also see a lot of trade potential here. The trade potential is going to increase with climate change. As a matter of fact, the volume is going to increase. And there's going to be more investment here, but it has to be fair. That is the thing. The production methods have to meet the 10 principles of fair trade and the 17 sustainable development goals and the 160 sub-goals under those sustainable development goals. Again, decent industrialization, the Sustainable Development Goal 8, it has to meet that. So in many areas, INOGAR has also been trying to do this. And when we had our first talk about fair trade in INOGAR, what really excited us is that there are good practices around the world, and they can be actively used in 2,000 cities around the world, and it can be economically successful, financially successful. Therefore, it has sustainability as well. Therefore, the organizations, the states, big companies, civil society organizations, local administrations, and us, the people, exist with their preferences, with their choices. So if you can choose the right thing, then it can happen. If it is not happening, then we are the obstacles. Therefore, we have to change the mentality, the mindset, as Bego has done, as Uygar has done, as Güneş'in has done. And we can do this through good examples. So you silenced Bego, but you can't silence me, apparently. I'm just going on. So lastly, we're together in terms of accelerating, exploiting social enterprises and also the creation of more cooperatives. And I'm there because of it as well, because cooperative means sharing of the responsibilities as well, making common decisions, whether it be research and development, whether it be sustainable development. With the cooperative, you always work together and join forces. That is the kind of model that you employ in cooperatives. I'm just going to give you an example. So we have a cooperation with MasterCard in terms of localization of the needs mapping. There are disaster-afflicted households in the disaster areas, disaster zones, and the municipalities would try to support the affected people, and we wanted to create social marketplaces and improve the access of the disaster-afflicted people to these social marketplaces at the local level, and have a system where the local needs would be met by local means. So creating opportunities and doing this in an environmentally friendly way and in fair working conditions, that is possible. And as you can see, as a matter of fact, in this example that I've given, you can fulfill 4 of them in one go. You create new opportunities, you decrease carbon footprint, you also have a transparent system in which you get your supplies from the local areas, knowing fully what price they are. So with that perspective, we're trying to instill this in every area of our lives. And obviously, there are so many ideas that we couldn't yet realize because of the lack of financial means to be able to do that, but we're trying to pave new ways to be able to do that. I don't want to take too much of your time either. So lastly, what kind of an impact does this have on art? Inogash has contributed to the establishment of an arts cooperative, a theatre cooperative. The theatre sector obviously has been affected a lot by the pandemic period. So at first, that organization was founded with 39 theatres, but we increased this number to 70. And with the perspective of fair trade, in 7 regions, we established these cooperatives. Now we're going to a union, national union of theatres, as a matter of fact. We would like to expand art, free will, free thought, and while we're improving justice, we would also like to make our working conditions fairer as well. That is why we're speaking to the professional organizations as well. So at the moment, we're trying to turn discourse into action. We're trying to better working conditions for theatricals. We're working on fair insurance mechanisms. At the moment, as an entrepreneur, I may be running a play, for example, directing a play, and then I go to a TV series, to the production of a TV series, and then, for example, I may be involved in a dubbing job. So there are different models that I work in which in one I'm a boss, in the other I'm an employee, but I have to be accountable for what I'm doing as well. And the tax officer, for example, has to also hold you to account for a tax that you have to even take from yourself. So we always have to be self-controlling as well, asking questions, interrogating ourselves, and always be ready to answer those questions and have an accountable system. So I'm not going to take any more of your time. I'm going to wrap up. I'd like to mention the actors trade union as well, actors union as well, the theatre cooperative, the actors union. They are helping a lot in terms of making art fairer. And we're making the same demands in art as well with all the stakeholders, and that is the kind of world that we're targeting at the moment. I just wanted to end with that note. So I believe that getting together in this meeting was a very good start. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, all the panelists, all the attendees who've been following us. And we have a small announcement. The trainings are going to start soon. We have shared the social media accounts in the chat box. You will be able to see the dates and times of the trainings there. The project's name is Building Networks for Social Enterprises, Fair Trade Turkey. Once again, it has been a pleasure to have you here in the launching event. Thank you very much to the Directorate for EU Affairs for their support and contribution, and also to the project partner, the World Fair Trade Organization. Thank you very much. So we are wrapping up at the moment. Thank you very much and goodbye.